Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of E.W. Jackson for America. Great to be with you again today. Excuse me. I want to start off talking about this conflict between President Trump and Harvard University. And I want to point out a couple of things that I think are really important to know. And I say this, by the way, as an alumnus of Harvard Law School. And it gives me no joy to think that I am an alumnus of a school that, in my view, presents a major problem for our country when it should really be a crown jewel of this nation. In fact, I think it is a potential curse to America. So let me tell you why. I didn't realize this until this whole conflict and controversy started over these student visas. I didn't realize that 27% of Harvard's campus are foreign students. I didn't realize that. I mean, that's major. That's almost a third of their entire campus are foreign students. Now, I met a lot of foreign students when I was there. A lot of them were coming for advanced degrees. When I was at the law school, I met a lot of foreign students who were coming for, what is that degree? There's a degree beyond the JD. I think they call the Master of Jurisprudence, I think it's called. But at any rate, it's an advanced degree for people who perhaps want to teach and that kind of thing. And I met a bunch of foreign students who were there. At the time, I didn't really think about it. But now to see 27% of their student body are foreigners, the overwhelming majority of those come from China, by the way. China is the single largest source of their foreign students. I also did not realize, I got some scratchiness in my voice. I also did not realize that Harvard actually gets to grant student visas for students coming to the school. I did not know that. I mean, I assume that must be then true for higher education. Colleges get to grant visas for foreign students. Is that really the case? Well, we know that that's the case for Harvard. Now, what I'm reading now says that colleges don't get to grant visas. What is Harvard, some special case that they are allowed to do that? I'll try to clarify that. But that's the way it appears. Let's see what yes. Yes, they do. So Harvard apparently is designated as an exchange program sponsor for the Student and Exchange Visitor Program. And so Harvard does actually get to grant student visas because of that special status that it has. Now, I don't know whether that's shared by other schools as well, but Harvard has it. So I didn't know that. I didn't know that any school could grant student visas. Now, just think about that for a second. Here's the problem we're facing. And this you may have heard and forgotten because it happened 11 years ago. In 2014, the single largest donation that Harvard had ever gotten, it got from T.H. Chan. T.H. Chan is a Chinese national, came from Hong Kong with known ties to the Chinese Communist Party. They renamed the Harvard School of Public Health after him. It's now called the T.H. Chan School of Health. What's the exact name of it? Yeah, the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. That's what it's now called. The Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. So it's named after a Chinese national with known ties to the Communist Party of China. And the grant that they gave them, the contribution that they made to Harvard, was $350 million, the largest Harvard had ever received up to that point. Now, I don't know whether there's been a larger one since. You see the problem that this is shaping up to be? Because what this really suggests is, and remember, China was using, and I don't know whether they've stopped this now, but they were using Confucius Institutes, establishing those in universities as a way of infiltrating American universities. They were establishing chairs. They were giving money to establish chairs, and it was understood one of the restrictions was that you cannot teach anti-Chinese or anti-communist information at these schools. In other words, in return for the money, you become a propaganda arm for the Chinese Communist Party. Now, again, folks, that's not an exaggeration. That's not hyperbole. I mean, that's explicitly understood. And of course, it makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, being tyrants, totalitarianists, communists, of course they're not going to give money to people and then say, oh, and if you want to denounce communism and you want to denounce China, that's fine, no problem. This is no strings attached. Well, of course, we're not foolish enough to believe that, even if they told us that was the case. But they've made clear, I think it's on the public record, that it is understood that when you take this money, you become, in effect, an advocate for China. Now, do you see the problem this poses for our national security? Because it is a big, gaping hole. I mean, these universities are doing very, very sensitive scientific research. As we know, President Trump is seeking to cancel contracts with Harvard. Well, those contracts are not primarily for social services or teaching foreign languages. Those services are primarily for research that Harvard is doing that benefit the government. Do you see the problem with, on the one hand, Harvard being in a position to take literally hundreds of millions of dollars from foreign enemies, and China is a foreign enemy. They're not simply an adversarial competitor, they're a foreign enemy. Millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars from them, and then being able to decide who actually comes into the country and gets access to Harvard. Now, there's been some discussion, I don't know whether it's verified or not, but again, you and I, just based upon common sense and the way the world works, and if you have any understanding of communism whatsoever, these reports that many of these students are trained Chinese communist spies, does that shock anybody? Are you shocked by that? Do you think, well, I can't believe it. I can't believe that China would send spies into our country, into our universities? Well, of course. We're not dumb. And of course, in fact, just the opposite. If someone were to assert or to say, you know what, China has made a vow, they're never going to send anybody into America, into any of these universities who is a spy for China or is reporting back to the Communist Party of China or is in any way tied to the Chinese government, they're never going to do that. You and I would go, okay, so what's next? You're going to sell me the Brooklyn Bridge? Because we know that would. I mean, look, we're a free country. But in terms of having our people placed around the world, I don't doubt that America uses people. In fact, we know that America uses people undercover to do other things as CIA operatives, as spies. You think China, a totalitarian, tyrannical dictatorship, wouldn't do that? Of course. That doesn't shock us either. What ought to shock us and disturb us is the idea that our university system would be in a position to be rewarded by the very enemy and adversarial governments that we, God forbid, that we could one day perhaps even be in a hot war with, or at the very least face very serious challenges to our national security and our future, that they would be in a position to take money from them and bring in the people handpicked by our enemies. You know, you may have heard me tell this story before, but it seems appropriate here. When I was running for, I don't know what office I was running for, because I've only run for 2 offices, Senate and Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, but I don't know which one it was. But I was being interviewed by a reporter from the Richmond Times-Dispatch. It had to be Senate, because that's right, this was after Trump was on the scene, so it's 2018. And the reporter says to me, "So what is it that you like about Donald Trump?" And I said, well, the first thing I said is Donald Trump is setting a tone of patriotism and love of country, which I think is extremely important. And the reporter said this, I will never forget it. The reporter says, "No, I mean something real." That's what the reporter, I mean something real. And I looked at him and said, you see, that's the problem with you and people who think like you. But people who think like me, love of country, patriotism, loyalty to our own nation is very real, because without it, we are not going to survive. And he just moved on to something else. He wasn't interested in that. So what it is these educated elites do not see themselves as having loyalty to the United States of America. They see themselves as citizens of the world. They see themselves as serving a profession, academia, journalism, that transcends national boundaries. I'm bigger than my country. I'm more important than that. I can't be limited by these little mundane, insignificant, trivial ideas like citizenship to a particular country. That's their attitude. You know, the first time I heard that was years ago. And you know where I heard it from? Reporters at CNN. They were the first ones I heard talk that way. Well, we're reporting on the international events of the world. We can't be tied to and have loyalty and bias for America. I mean, they were making clear, we have no interest in that. And I think that's the mindset that has infected our elites. And the problem with that, folks, is that means we can be more easily undermined from within. I said, Abraham Lincoln said that if America falls, it will not be because of outward challenges, but because of inward rot. I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what he said. And what better place to inject the bacterium of infection than the top university, the wealthiest university in America, that is really a funnel for placing people in all kinds of positions of influence. I mean, you've got presidents come out of Harvard, Supreme Court justices come out of Harvard. You've got, all kinds of government officials and people in very, very important positions come out of Harvard. And what better place to get in and infiltrate and take control and brainwash people and basically co-opt people's loyalty to their own country? What better place to do that than Harvard? Now, there are other schools, obviously, where that can be done. And maybe there's some other schools with the same privilege that Harvard has. I haven't done the research on that, and there probably are some of these top Ivy League schools with a lot of money who apparently depend, as Harvard does, on such a large number of foreign students. And I guarantee you the foreign students coming for the most part aren't poor. I guarantee most of them are coming because they're sponsored by a wealthy family, or they're sponsored by their government, or what have you. So I just wanted to get that out there, because it's this is the way. I said, look, Xi Jinping may be thinking to himself, why would I ever want to fight America when I can buy it? You know? Yeah. Why would I ever want to fire a missile when I can just send cash? The courts, I'm going to just get that issue out there. The courts are, as you know, blocking the Federal Trade Court is blocking President Trump's tariffs. And I don't know, and they're saying he doesn't have the power under the Emergency Powers Law to institute these tariffs. The president is saying our trade deficits constitute a national emergency. Now, here's the thing that I find, again, troubling about that. First of all, where in the Constitution does it give the courts the right to determine what is a national emergency based upon our foreign policy and foreign affairs? The conduct of our foreign policy is placed in the hands of the executive, which is the President of the United States. It's not placed in the hands of the courts. Now, if the president is declaring a domestic emergency and using that to achieve certain things, okay, I can have I have a lot more acceptance of the fact that courts can step in and say, well, wait a minute, this law provides this law provides that, and so on and so forth. But when it comes to the conduct of foreign policy, you see, once again, it's just like I say, once you remove standards, then new standards are set. The question is, who are they set by? So if the president of the United States does not have the ability to conduct our foreign policy without interference with the courts, and they can actually stop him, for example, from saying, well, look, in my view, in the view of the president of the United States, we are in a financial emergency because of these major trade deficits. Folks, what is it, $36 trillion in debt now? And we've got trade deficits over the trillions of dollars, money just leaving our country, going to foreign countries. We built China. We built China. China's economic strength and power wouldn't exist without the United States of America. We built it. We gave them all their missiles. We gave them all their military. All the stuff that they now have. We gave it to them because we are their single greatest trading partner. Now, you mean to tell me the courts get to step in and say, well, no, it's not an emergency. We will tell you when it's an emergency. Really? Who elected you and gave you authority to do that? So it'll be interesting to see whether this finds its way to the Supreme Court, because in my view, it is the president who determines from a foreign policy perspective the nature of an emergency. Of course, he can be reined in by Congress passing laws that prevent the president from doing this, that, or the other, as long as those laws are constitutional. I mean, you can't pass a law that supersedes the Constitution. You can't pass a law that says the president will have no further responsibilities. That won't work, because the Constitution gives the president his responsibility. He is the chief executive officer of the United States of America, of the federal government of the United States of America. And as such, he's responsible for the execution of the laws. Congress is responsible for passing them. The president is responsible for executing them. And the courts are responsible simply for resolving cases and controversies, not making policy. So it'll be interesting to see how far this is going to go. In my view, what we're really dealing with is rogue courts that don't like Donald Trump, and they're going to use their authority, abuse their authority, stretch their authority, misinterpret their authority, expand their authority, violate their lawful authority, and go beyond the restrictions of the law and the Constitution on them in order to stop this president because they don't like him. They don't like his policies. And well, they don't like him primarily. In some cases, they would like his policies, but they can't like his policies because they hate him, and so therefore they can never accept his policies. I mean, bringing down drug prices, for example, something the president is committed to doing. Democrats have been railing about that for decades. The president's doing it, but you think they say, well, you know what? Congratulations, Mr. President. We agree with you. No, because they hate him. And besides, as I've said many times, it's not about policies to help people anyway. That's just a vehicle to power. It's about power. And the president's got it and they don't. And so they hate him and they don't care what he does. Nothing he does will be acceptable to them. Nothing that he does will be approved by them because it's not the policies they want. It's the power that they want. The policies are secondary at best. So I just pray that the Supreme Court will step up. As I said, folks, there's only two justices I have any confidence in, Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito. The rest, the conservative ones appointed by Trump, I don't know. I really don't know. I really don't know. Because, again, they wouldn't take this case of this Massachusetts kid who was essentially punished for wearing a T-shirt that said there are only two genders. They punished him for that. I mean, we got kids getting suspended from school, kids not being allowed to graduate because they're exercising their First Amendment liberties, and the church and the court won't take the case. Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas wanted to take it. Where's Gorsuch? Where's Kavanaugh? Where's Amy Coney Barrett? Where are they? I don't even ask where John Roberts is because he's out in La La Land, another graduate of Harvard Law School, with my class, by the way. Yeah, John Roberts and I were in the same class. I didn't really know him. I saw him around campus, but I didn't really know him. But he's just one of these noblesse oblige Republicans who, he doesn't have the conviction of a gnat about anything other than I'm just kind of here. I mean, what good does it do to say you're doing something out of duty when you have no convictions about what the duty is you owe? Lord, help us. The next thing I want to deal with is this, and then the last thing I want to deal with is some of this whole Seattle debacle and all these Christians being accused of having created problems, and the mayor denouncing them. But I will come to that. Again, I don't really follow professional sports anymore. Not that I was ever an aficionado, but I enjoyed it, and I've stopped because they've so politicized sports that it's an irritant. And I say, well, why in the world do I want to spend my leisure time being irritated? So do something else with my time. Sit around, listen to scripture, or watch a movie that I like, or read a book that I like, or, I can find plenty of things to do with my time other than watching something that is going to poke me in the eye and spit in my face and insult me. No, thank you. But at any rate, ESPN, which is really just now at this point, it's just a leftist cabal. But this woman, Chiney Ogwumike, I think that's her name. I guess she's from, I'm not sure where she's from. That sounds a little bit Nigerian, so maybe she married a Nigerian, or maybe she's got an unusual name, Chiney Ogwumike. She made a comment because of this accusation that fans were engaging in racial epithets toward Angel Reese. Now, Angel Reese is apparently this WNBA player, I guess a star, who's got has been having a kind of really kind of ugly racial rivalry with this with this other woman. What's her name? Caitlyn, the woman who's come out and become, a real basketball star. But she happens to be white. Okay? And so that's the big issue. And so she shouldn't be getting the recognition that she's getting, blah, 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 because, the woman is apparently, by all measures, an outstanding player, but no, that's not why she's getting recognition. She's only getting recognition because she's white. Well, this woman, Chiney, if that's how you pronounce her name, when these accusations came out, she immediately jumped on it and said, "This is terrible. This is horrible." She says, "When it comes to racism and the hateful rhetoric and the statements that the WNBA is saying, I think it's important at the end of the day, if you're truly a basketball fan, you would understand and agree that we have no space in our game for those types of comments and not putting more gasoline on the fire, where we're here to appreciate the beautiful basketball game." And we said, but since she went on, right? Well, they did an investigation and they found out that none of this happened. That nobody was throwing any racial epithets at Angel Reese. It simply didn't happen. So now she's apologizing for having acted. Oh, Caitlin Clark is her name. Yeah, Caitlin Clark. She's apologized because I was thinking another Caitlin. I didn't want to say it. I was thinking of Bruce, who has taken the name Caitlin. Bruce. But anyway, she's apologizing now. Oh, I didn't. Sorry about that. Here's what I want to say about this, because this is the ROS syndrome. That is ROS, which I have dubbed racial obsession syndrome, where everything is racial. Everything. And when there's nothing racial, you make it up. When you can't find anything, you create something. Remember the car racer and the controversy that somebody had put a noose in his bay and it was a racist symbol? And come to find out, it was nothing but a standard piece of equipment that you find. It's a rope in every bay. Oh, oops, sorry. Remember that? And we could play this out. By the way, they did the same thing with the Tea Party, which I was graciously and gratifyingly happy to be a part of. Those Tea Party members are making racist comments, and they were making racist comments toward members of the Black Caucus, and they were making racist comments at their rallies. Only one little problem. They could never find not a single instance of that. Not one. Not one. Not one. What they could find is some outlier showing up at a tea rally with a Confederate flag, and the Tea Party members would drive them off and say, "No, we're not. That's not what we're here for." And so you'd have these occasional outliers who would come in and try to change, and basically try to change what the whole point of the meeting was. The point of the Tea Party started out, the point was fiscal responsibility. Remember, we kicked off the Tea Party, and I spoke at the first rally in Virginia on April 15th of 2009, Tax Day. That's when it kicked off. It was about fiscal responsibility. It had nothing to do with race, had nothing to do with racism. In fact, for a long time, those of you who know anything about it, the Tea Party stayed completely away from the social issues, even though my experience was most Tea Party members were Christians, pro-life, pro-family people. But that was not what the Tea Party was focused on. But the Tea Party is a bunch of angry, racist white people. And I'd say I'm some of the greatest people I've met. In fact, people I met during the Tea Party movement when it was really active are still dear friends today. dear friends, supporters, encouragers, just wonderful people. In fact, the head of the Tea Party here in Virginia is one of my best friends. But this is what they do when you don't agree with them. They have to figure out a way to smear you. And this woman is now apologizing. The problem is, it is not just that they got their facts wrong. It is that there's something deep in their hearts that is so full of hatred for people who do not agree with them, who do not share their wicked, twisted worldview, that they must slander them, they must vilify them, they must discredit them, they must marginalize them, they must show that these people are evil. You say, well, now what's that got to do with basketball? Because look, folks, the people like me, and I don't even follow this stuff, who are saying, why don't we just evaluate Caitlin Clark on the basis of her talent and leave it at that? No, we can't. No, this is about white people. Folks, that is so wicked and evil. It almost defies my vocabulary because, again, what it speaks to is a fundamental misunderstanding of the world, of history, and a fundamental rejection of truth. I'm going to be talking to, speaking at Greenbrier Christian Academy graduation on Saturday, and I'm going to be talking to the students about some of this. And let me just give you a little bit of a hint. You see, when your view of the world is based upon lies, then you are forced, because you can't make lies true. You can't make reality conform to lies, right? You just can't do it because reality is reality. It will not conform to lies. You can't make right wrong. You can't make wrong right, no matter how much you try to assert it. And so, unlike when you are speaking truth, where the truth has its own power, and the truth has its own ability to withstand attack and assault, lies don't. So you are forced to resort to the destruction of those who present the truth in the face of lies. Because the truth will always win out over lies, so you've got to destroy the people who would dare raise the truth. Oh, they're racist. They're racist. They're Nazis. They're Christian nationalists. They're haters. They're bigots. They're homophobes, Islamophobes. You name it. Misogynists. Because that's all they've got. I say it's a denial of history, and a little hint about what I'm going to be talking about with these students. Because again, the history of the world is a history of conflict because of the sinfulness of the human heart, not because of the color of people's skin. Again, it's not the skin, it's the sin. So, but the beat goes on, and you can rest assured that this whole Caitlin Clark controversy, which is no controversy at all, is going to continue because the left doesn't have anything else with which to vilify the people who will not agree with their worldview, other than to disparage them by calling them one of the worst things a person can be called, which is a racist. Okay. Here's the last thing I want to cover. You know, they had this rally out in Seattle that Christians got together to come against this whole so-called LGBTQ garbage, which is going to be, their so-called Pride Month. Well, Christians came together peacefully to protest, by the way, in a place that the city designated them to be. But apparently that place, the homosexual activists and sexual deviant activists considered to be theirs. And so they were particularly offended that these Christians showed up praying and singing and preaching God's word. And the situation turned violent. Now, here's the thing you need to understand first and foremost. Not a single Christian was arrested for an act of violence because not a single Christian committed any. All the violence was committed by the trans Tifa people. They were the ones arrested. They were the belligerents. They were the people fighting cops, and the Christians were not, because they were peaceful in their conduct throughout the entire thing, even when they were attacked. And yet the mayor blamed the Christians. Yeah, the mayor blamed the Christians. Here is what the community said. I want to share with you what they said, and then I want to give you my version of it. This is some of what they said. Quote, this is a statement that they put out about their counter rally. We proudly recognize and celebrate the experiences, achievements, and contributions of the LGBTQ plus community in the continuous quest for equality. And on it went. Now, that sounds pretty innocuous, but of course it's all a lie. And by the way, this is the kind of stuff they're putting out in Washington, D.C., because you know what? Reagan National Airport is being turned into LGBTQ national headquarters for the month of June. So if you have to fly through Reagan, just get ready, because you are going to be bombarded with rainbows and homos and all of it. Yep. They're decorating the whole airport with homosexuality. So these statements that I'm sharing with you, that these are the kinds of things that you're going to be reading if you go through the Reagan National Airport, about how wonderful it is to be homosexual, how wonderful it is to be gender confused, how wonderful it is for a girl to have her breast cut off or a guy to have his genitalia cut off. Oh, just celebrating. And it's an abomination to God. I've rewritten what they really should say if they want to be honest. Are you ready? Here's what they really should say. We proudly recognize and celebrate our sexual depravity, our evil influence on children, and grooming of young people, and the contributions of the SPCG, sexual perversion, child grooming, community, to make America and the world one big Sodom and Gomorrah in our continued quest to drag everybody to hell with us. Now, if they were really using truth in advertising, that's what they would say. Because that is the truth. Not all this other, we're celebrating our continuous quest for equality. Give me a break. Sin can never be equal to righteousness. Okay? It can't. A sinful act can never be equal to a righteous act. Homosexuality is inherently sinful. Two men coming together in sexual intimacy is inherently sinful. A husband and a wife coming together in intimacy is not sinful at all. The Bible says the marriage bed is not defiled. One is done in righteousness, the other is done in wickedness and sin, and you can't make the two equal. But here we go. The lies just continue to flow like water. By the way, one other thing I want to point out for your consideration that I've said before. I said this, I think maybe yesterday, Watch the Six. Notice what happened in this protest out in Seattle. The homosexual activists turned violent. Right, they turned violent. There seems to be a growing tendency. No, strike that. There is, doesn't seem to be. There is a growing tendency toward violence in these communities. I said, when you don't have the truth, which is really its own defense, and all you have is lies, I said you have to destroy those who would confront the lies with truth. But now it seems that they've concluded that you don't only have to destroy those reputationally, destroy them in terms of discrediting them or marginalizing them. No, it seems like you have to injure them and kill them. But look, but that's the next logical step, right? I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it? If, in fact, as you claim, Donald Trump is the equivalent of Hitler or Osama bin Laden, well, the next logical step, right? I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with the Valkyrie, the plan to assassinate Adolf Hitler by some of the Germans who knew that Adolf Hitler was leading them off the cliff. Nobody looks at that history and said, that was a terrible thing they were doing. That was horribly immoral. No, we say, man, the world would have been a better place if they succeeded. Because we know that Hitler was the epitome of evil. And killing him would have been doing the world a favor. We killed Osama bin Laden. Anybody say, oh man, that was terrible. That was not right. We shouldn't have done that. Of course not. We know that the man was a pernicious, evil figure who, as long as he lived, would have been plotting how to hurt innocent people, how to kill innocent people, how to destroy society. And we killed him. And I don't believe that was an immoral act at all. I think it was a righteous act. So if Donald Trump is the equivalent of Adolf Hitler and Osama bin Laden, and as some have suggested, we Christian conservatives, we biblical worldview conservatives are the equivalent of Nazis, the equivalent of the Taliban. It was Rosie O'Donnell who once said, these born-again Christians are like the Taliban. If we are, in fact, to be analogized to those evil people who must be killed to stop them, is it any surprise that people would look at us as, again, Christian conservatives, biblical worldview conservatives, and say, killing these people would not be a bad thing? Well, isn't that exactly what they've said about Luigi Mangione when he killed a healthcare executive? That's exactly what some of them said about this guy, Rodriguez, who killed these two innocent people at the D.C. Jewish Museum. He did a good thing. Jesus said the day will come when they will kill you and say that they do God's service. I'm simply pointing out to you, as I said, I think I said this yesterday, 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1, in the last days, perilous times will come. That word perilous is a Greek word that means dangerous. And we are living in dangerous times. And I'm not saying this for you to fear, because the Bible, Jesus said, don't fear man who can destroy the body, but fear God who can destroy both body and soul in hell. I don't walk a single day in any fear. I said, but you said you have security with you when you're speaking and whatnot. Yeah, I do, because really, to tell you the truth, because I am a good steward of what God has given me of my own life, and because I really came to a conviction that God was saying, that's what I want you to do. And I did it. Because I didn't really want to do it, to tell you the truth. I really didn't. It took me a while to even just get used to the idea. And I don't know, I'm completely used to it now. But, you know, I'm not the president of the United States, but it would be foolish for the president to say, you know what, I am not afraid, and I'm not going to have the Secret Service guarding me. Well, we'd say, Mr. President, sorry about that, but because of the role that you serve, we need the Secret Service guarding you. Now, I'm not I am not in any way analogizing myself to the President of the United States, but I'm just saying, but the same principle applies. If you're doing something valuable, you're doing something important, you want to be a good steward of your safety, your security, without being paranoid or walking in fear. You want to protect what you are trying to achieve, right? So I'm just saying, I don't know whether you'll ever participate in one of these rallies or protests or demonstrations. If you do, and you're out there and you're peacefully protesting, just be aware of what's going on around you. Because the people you're dealing with have no compunctions about hurting people. They have no compunctions about killing people. We're seeing, right? We're seeing. We just had 2 recent incidents of people assassinated and folks praising them for praising the people who committed the acts of violence. And not just a few, but many people praising them for it. So that is a sad reality. But I speak Psalm 91 over you, over myself, over our law enforcement, over our military troops, over every single one of us that has been or ever will be, and at this point, pretty much any Christian who is willing to take a stand is in harm's way. Pretty much. Because you just never know. When somebody overhears something or knows something, or you post something on social media and somebody says, you know, that's one of them. But we dwell in the secret place of the Most High, Psalm 91, and we abide under the shadow of the Almighty. The Lord is our refuge, our fortress, our God. In him we will trust, and he will deliver us from the snare of the fowler and from the perilous pestilence. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous is not Psalm 91, but it just comes to heart. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run to it and are safe. Our safety is in Jesus Christ ultimately. And even though I believe in the Second Amendment and the right to defend ourselves, and I believe that people ought to be good stewards of their own safety and the safety of their families, in times like these, you lock your doors and turn on your alarm system, and, whatever. But our ultimate safety and security is in Jesus Christ and him alone. Because he is the only one who sees everything and knows everything about everything and everybody. Nobody else does, but he does. And he can see a pit dug for you and guide you around it even though you don't know it's there. So praise the name of the Lord. In the end, as Joshua said, as for me and my house, as for me and my church, as for me and my ministry, as for me and my country, we will serve the Lord. God bless everybody. You know what to do. By the way, if you want to support us, you want to help us, sign up as a Patriot Partner. Go to standamerica.us, standamerica.us. Sign up as a Patriot Partner, and I will, if you, for as little as $5 a month, but if you sign up for $25 a month or more, I will send you a free signed copy of my book, my second book, my third book, I should say, Sweet Land of Liberty, Reflections of a Patriot Descended from Slaves. My new book is on the way, folks. It's on the way. I'm hoping that it will be out this year, and we'll continue that process with the new book when it comes out. But if you haven't got my third book yet, I keep saying my second because the first one's out of print. But if you haven't got my third book yet, by all means. Or if you just want to make a donation, by the way, you become a Patriot Partner. If you make a donation, one-time donation of $300 or more, that makes you a Patriot Partner as well. So you know what to do. Stand up, step up, speak up, and refuse to back up. Because we cannot be defeated if we will not quit. Because we are on God's side. God bless everybody.